Welcome back guys to our JavaScript session. You all are watching iTechShare, a channel to connect, discuss and share. In the first episode we have discussed some of the basic things and now time for us to get into some more advanced topics. So join me in this exciting session of JavaScript today. Happy learning. So our first topic today is object prototypes. In JavaScript, object prototypes are a key concept for object-oriented programming. Every object in JavaScript has a prototype, which is either null or another object. Prototypes are used to provide inheritance and shared properties among objects. When accessing a property or calling a method on an object, JavaScript first checks if the property or method exists on the object itself. If it does not, it looks up the prototype chain to find out the property or method on the prototype object. For example, in the below object prototype chain, you can see that student1 is getting inherited from the prototype. So this is the object chain in JavaScript. You can see there is one function called person, and I have also used a special property called prototype, person.prototype.greet, right? So every function in JavaScript has a special property called prototype. When you create an object using a constructor function, which I have done through function person, the prototype property of the constructor function, which is person.prototype.greet, becomes the property of the created object. That means the person.prototype.greet will be the property of the person object. You can add properties and methods to this prototype, which I have done through that greet, and they will be shared among all the instances created from that constructor function. I have declared const person1, through which I am creating one object. Next to that, I am creating another object through person2. At last, I am calling these properties of these two different objects, person1 greet and person2 greet, and ultimately see the result here. It is returning two different output. In this example, the greet method is added to the person prototype and it is accessible by all the instances of the person construction function. In JavaScript, a callback function is a function that is passed as an argument to another function and is invoked or called inside that function. Callback functions are commonly used in asynchronous operations, event handling, and functional programming paradigms. Let's have a quick look on this. This is the example of one callback function. Here you can see there are two functions like fetch data and process data. Ultimately, in the line number 13, you can see that process data function is being used here as a parameter. Let's now run this code. You can see the output processing data, which is getting derived from the process data, and this sum data is coming from the other function fetch data. This is the essence of callback function. Memoization is a technique used in programming to optimize the execution time of functions by caching the result of expensive function calls and returning the cached result when the same inputs occur again. The cached results are stored in memory, allowing subsequent calls with the same inputs to return the cached results instead of recomputing it. Here you can see the add number function, right? And we are calling this add number function several times with different parameters. First time we have passed 20, then 40, and again we are passing 20. So you can see that we are calling this function twice with the same input parameters with 20. Here in this case, it will recompute the things for the same parameter. This is not a good programming technique. Instead of this, we can use memoization here. In JavaScript, memoization can be implemented using closures and object properties. Here's an example of how you can implement memoization in JavaScript. Constructor is very important thing for any object-oriented programming language. In JavaScript, constructor functions are used to create objects. So here you can see I am creating one simple constructor like employee, and I am creating two different objects like employee1 and employee2. So in var emp1 I am creating the first object by passing test1, 36 and male. So these are the parameters for this object. In the second variable like employee2 I am creating the second object of the same type employee by passing the different parameters like test2, 34 and female. So like this way you can create multiple objects through constructor. DOM stands for Document Object Model, and it is a programming interface provided by web browsers to interact with HTML and XML documents. In the context of JavaScript, the DOM represents the structured representation of a web page, where each element in the HTML document is treated as an object with properties and methods that can be accessed and manipulated using JavaScript. Overall, the structures look like sticks. The root is the document, and then we are having elements and then events. Here is a brief overview of how the DOM works. First, let's discuss about the document. Document is the top level object in the DOM hierarchy, which represent the entire HTML document. Developers can use the object to access and modify the various elements present in the HTML. Second thing in this DOM hierarchy is the elements. HTML elements such as div, image, etc. are represented as objects in the DOM. Developers can access these elements using various methods like getElementById, querySelector, etc. and then modify their properties like inner HTML styles. Third thing in this hierarchy is the attributes. HTML attributes of elements are also represented as properties of DOM elements. For example, the ID and the class attribute of an HTML element can be accessed and modified through the corresponding properties of the DOM element. And last, the events. The DOM also allows developers to handle events such as clicks, key presses, etc. by attaching event listeners to DOM elements. This way, you can respond to user interactions with the web page. JavaScript can interact with the DOM to dynamically update the content and appearance of a web page, create interactive user interfaces, and respond to the user actions. It has become an essential part of web development as it enables developers to build dynamic and responsive web applications. In JavaScript, the call, apply, and bind methods are used to manipulate the context and arguments of a function during its execution. This is all about how you can use different types arguments of a function. These methods are particularly useful when you want to set the context of a function explicitly. Let's explore each of these methods. The call method allows you to call a function with a specified this value and individual arguments passed as separate arguments. The apply method is similar to call, but it accepts arguments as an array. The bind method creates a new function with a specified this value and any initial arguments that are provided. In this example, I will show you the implementation of call, apply, and bind method. You can see at line number 13, we are using call method, right? Where we are calling a function with a specified value and individual argument passed as parameter. In the second one, line number 15, you can see the implementation of apply method. It is following the same thing, but only difference is that we are passing this argument as array. And in the last one, which is line number 17 and 18, here we are using the bind method. In this example, bind creates a new function, bound function, and another person as the value and hello as the first argument. When bound function is called, it logs hello Alice to the console. Let's check this out. See here, all of three returning the same value, but the way of implementation is different. Promises are very important topic in JavaScript. In JavaScript, a promise is a built-in object used to represent the eventual completion of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. Promises are a way to handle asynchronous operations in a more structured and manageable manner. especially when dealing with multiple asynchronous tasks or avoiding deeply nested callback function. And it will have 4 stages or states, like pending, which is the initial state of promise. The state represents that the promise has neither been fulfilled or been rejected. It is in the pending state. Fulfilled, the state represents that the promise has been fulfilled, meaning the async operation is completed. Rejected, as the name suggests, this state represents that the promise has been rejected for some reason, meaning the async operation has failed. And the settled, this state represents that the promise has been either rejected or fulfilled. So it's done actually. Promises allows you to chain multiple asynchronous operations together using then and also handle errors effectively using catch. Additionally, you can use promise all and promise race to manage multiple promises concurrently or handle the fastest resolved promise. We use then to handle the fulfilled case and catch to handle the rejected case.